Building Information Modeling, or BIM for short, is a wonderful tool to create great architecture. Unfortunately, many might believe that BIM is out of their reach. This is because adapting from 2D drafting to BIM might seem time-consuming and costly. Also, it seems that BIM means a whole new workflow and methods which you need to learn from scratch, and the new requirements and legislations may seem too complicated to follow. Our mission behind ARCHLine is to open a gateway to BIM. ARCHLine makes the transition from 2D drafting to BIM step by step. It takes you from 2D to 3D modeling and introduces BIM parameters to your workflow. Sharing your projects with other professionals is effortless. The software makes sure that you can use your already existing CAD skills, files, and projects to stay competitive. The gate is now open for new challenges and previously unavailable projects. ARCHLine is an out-of-the-box IFC-certified BIM software. No extra plugins are needed to complete your project because your design will contain everything in a single file. You will work together with other parties of the building industry seamlessly. Avoid misunderstandings. Use real products. Collaborate better than before. BIM is quickly becoming the standard. Make sure you are there. With ARCHLine.
Hello and welcome to the third part of the Gateway to BIM webinar series. My name is Zoltán Tóth. Over here is, as always, our resident architect, Mr. Illés.
Hi there.
Like I mentioned, this is the third part, and that means that we already had 2 sessions in this webinar series. If you missed those, don't worry, you are going to find them on our website, and I'm going to send an email around to notify you what you missed. But just in a nutshell, what we had discussed so far, the aim of this webinar series is to show you how ARCHLine can be used to build up buildings from scratch and how to get building information out of these models. So that being said, first time when we had the first sessions, we looked at how to create 3-dimensional building models, walls, slabs, roofs, and complicated structures from scratch without any information whatsoever. During the second phase of our shows, we discussed how to use existing data, how to utilize site surveys, terrain data to further add details to this model. But now comes the point when we are not going to add any further details to our models. Instead, we are going to look at how to extract and retrieve data from these models. So we are going to
document it.
Yes, how to get documentation of values out of it. So we are going to look at today how to create sections, elevational drawings, quantity takeoffs, and how to get all kinds of information out of one single building model. So what we are going to do first, we are going to look at the model that we are always using, but while it loads, I'll tell you the gist of what you can expect today. You can, as always, ask questions on the right-hand side of this webinar bar, so you can ask your questions there. At the end, we are going to look at that. And you might find that some things we are going to not go into that much details, but those things are going to be dealt with further during our next session this Thursday, which will be about BIM in practice, and the last one, which will be about visualization next Tuesday.
Yeah.
Let's look at the model that we have here. So the model itself was given to us by one of our users, right?
Yeah, and we are very thankful for that. This is the model that we used in all the other phases as well. And now we loaded one stage of this model where most of the things they are already there. Actually, at least the architectural parts, symbolic symbols, and the terrain and the surrounding everything is fine and as it should be. Mm-hmm. So it is, though it's a draft version of the final project, because they're not in this specific stage there are no layers of the building yet and so on, which can be detailed at any time. But still, it is already well developed enough so that we can create these section drawings, elevations, and we can actually demonstrate how these things happen during the workflow and how these are interconnected with each other with this single source, the model itself, the building itself. And I will also demonstrate for the users who are most likely like to work with 2D drawings, how to detach these drawings from the linked version when everything gets refreshed automatically to something that you are much more familiar if you use something like a 2D drawing software. So nothing is necessary, but these are kind of steps that you will feel comfortable if you come from another software use.
Yes, there might be some similarities, but we are going to point them out.
Yeah.
And some special features, but we are going to talk about them too. Let's look at the simple documentation tools first. So we see that now we have a model over here. We see the 2D and the 3D viewports. What happens if you want to add additional details like symbols, location stamps, or maybe some measurements?
Yeah.
So let's start with the beginning. Before we start getting sections, how do we get the basic measurements and stamps?
And actually, if you would like to add those dimensions and other things to actually, if you would like to work with the documentation part, it's at the end of the top side ribbon bar. It's actually the dimension and the documentation. So if you would like to add any sort of building dimension, you would likely go with these here. These are not the only options. As you can see, there are several options. Whenever if you would like to measure the pitch of the roof or something like that, there are tools for that. But now, to keep it simple, if you would like to simply measure the layout of the floor plan that you have created, and you would like to add details for the walls and things like that, you should use the building and all walls tool here. If you click that, this sort of dialog comes up where you can see the possibilities at the top, and there are the executable commands at the bottom. And how it works, by default this is empty. This is an empty list, and you can just select something, add, and it appears here. And so you can build up an order, and this will be the execution order. So first the door window details will be measured, and then the endpoints of the walls, and then the main connections. So this way you can actually set up how they are ordered on the dimension string. So if you simply say, okay, now I just keep this because I like this layout, and just say okay, then all you need to do is just to select the full layout with all the walls, and then when you hit enter, the software will recognize the outer boundaries of your design, and then you can just move your mouse somewhere. But if you see something that you like, for example, I like this as a position for my dimensions, then the software will try to get as much detail as possible for these 4 sides, and measure those, and make them appear according to their size. And then you can see that these are the connections. Well, actually there are no windows here, so that's why we can't see that value here. But there is this window distance, there is this wall length, there's this room size, and then there are the breakpoints in the elevation. So this is how it recognizes most of the details. This won't recognize all of the details because sometimes the building shape can be very complex. You use some sort of specific solution for that specific issue or situation which you faced. So if something is missing, for example, from here, then you can still use this simple tool, the walls tool, and then you can just use the same and just click somewhere, and then you just measure it, and
you measure that one individual.
you just place it, or you do the opposite here, and then you just set it up. So this is also something that you can use easily. And then also you can use tools like this is, I think, the simplest measurement tool, the align dimension, which allows you to pick literally any sort of 2 points on your drawing, like this and, for example, this here, and then it literally measures that distance. Now, many times we would like to measure things either vertically or horizontally, at least on the traditional layouts, if it's not angled or something like that. So in that case, I don't want to measure this real distance between the two, but if I right-click, then I can measure its horizontal component, or I can again right-click, and then I can measure the vertical component, and then I can just left-click, and I can place this dimension. So even if you measure 2 separate points which are not perpendicular to or vertical or horizontal to each other,
they don't really align, they are shifted in space, then you can just draw the measurement across and decide if you want to have a vertical or a horizontal.
Yeah, you can then this is how I call it. You can force the measurement to horizontal or vertical, even if it was not horizontal or vertical distance between 2 items. Talking about this, there is another very useful tool, which is the serial dimensions, and I will talk about this later when we have the section. And about this, there is another one which is called the serial dimension. Actually, there is the length here, and then you can find the continuous dimensions. This brings you many other possibilities. These you can even use if you are not an architect, but you work for a different profession. But now, as an architect, I'm using this serial dimension, and there's one specific option that I really like to use. This is the quote, the virtual intersection, and this, if I just enable this option and I click OK, then I can demonstrate how this works. I just pick this point, and then I pick, for example, this point, and then I just place it here. See, now the software automatically measured each and every breakpoint which my line intersected, so you can easily measure details inside your drawing. Now keep that in mind that it will literally intersect everything. So if you measure it here, it will intersect these as well. So
what about
you can control
lines?
that with the.
So not only objects would intersect, but also two-dimensional draft lines, right?
Yes. Actually, this is a line here. This is not an object.
Oh, okay.
This is no object here. These are also no objects here. You just the software simply literally just intersects things, so it makes it easy to use. But also you should keep that in mind that if you don't want to intersect something, then you should at least hide that layer or something before you measure it, and then the software works like that. And there is another tool, which is the serial in horizontal and serial in vertical, which I will use soon, so you will see how that works. This is it's quite similar to this, but it works in a different manner.
What about symbols? I see one right over there with the height values. So how do you add objects like this one? Because we so far we've seen during the first show how to add three-dimensional elements, but when it comes to annotations and symbols, that's something that we haven't touched upon yet.
Yeah, well, if we talk about specific symbols for measurement, we should find it in the dimension tool. It's this specifically, it's called the elevation and floor plan. It's a very simple tool to use. Again, you just click on it, and then you need to determine of which object you would like to measure, and then what point of that object you would like to measure. Now, in my case, the object itself will be the wall, and actually this specific point. So first I click to select it, and then I click in this vertical point to select the point which I would like to measure, and then I can decide where either I would like to measure its top point or its bottom point. Now let's just measure the top point, and then the software recognizes the height of this wall, and then I can either keep it or make a correction. Designing an architectural drawing sometimes needs some manual correction. You can do that, but if you designed everything properly and everything is correct, you just keep that value and you say OK, and then you can select the symbol. There is a symbol library where you can select other different symbols, and then you can say OK, and then you just place it somewhere, and then you have this measurement here. So this way you can actually measure. I just touch that here. You can measure the floor height, the ceiling height, and all sorts of items you can measure the same way.
What about north symbols?
The north symbol, now that's what I determine as a classic symbol. These are actually groups. When we talk about symbols, 2D groups of 2D items, we really literally translate them into groups. So you will be able to find a group library with several different topics here, different libraries or categories here. And then, for example, if you like to add the north sign, you just need to go to the signed library, and you should find the north sign for the English designs. And then now if I just click and drag and release this item here, see, now it's automatically aligned to the project north, and it's simply because the name contains the word north. So the software understands that this is likely a north sign, so I don't even have to rotate it. If I already designed and if I already determined, which I think we covered this topic last time.
How to geolocate your project. That's when we discussed the north direction, and these kind of symbols automatically pick up the north direction that we set up.
Symbols are actually, the groups are actually built up of 2D primitives, we call them. It's the lines, the hatch, the text, and so on. When you select it, they're selected together. They are part of this one single group, and there are some specific settings here. Like, for example, you can force now it's a black color set here, so you can force that color onto the group, and then it will turn into black. So there are some specifics that you can use for these sort of specific groups, and you can place them on a different layer and so on. So these are handled as groups in ARCHLine.
What about other annotational tools? For instance, a location stamp comes to mind when you want to designate the rooms, because the software by itself is unable to designate where one room ends and the other one begins.
Yeah, well, actually the software determines this by just simply clicking into a room. If you use the building and there is the room and area and room by walls, this is one of the simplest options and quickest option. If I move my mouse here, it's having this exclamation mark. This means it cannot recognize a closed boundary here, which is true. If I move my mouse inside the room, then it turns into a web like this, and then you can just select any of these here, and then you just click here, and then it turns into a room with a label and all sorts of information automatically measured. Now this is what we call a room and area with the room and area tool, and now it comes with several norms that you can select based on your location, which is mostly accepted. You can change the limits and values here. Now this is one important thing. Here you can change the room name. This should be, for example, I think this is for example, office room. And then I just say it's okay. So now you can even turn on or off the flooring. I mean, whether it's represented in text or something, and then the software automatically measures this thing here. Now, if you measure something that has no walls around, like a terrace or something else, then you can use this room by polygon. And in this case, you just literally click on the boundaries of that, for example, terrace, and then you just say, okay, enter, close it, and then you just place another contour if you would like to add some sort of something that you would like to exclude.
Yes.
And you can set up a height if that's important. Now in this case it's not that much important, so I just keep it on default, and then it again turns into a room which you can rename to, for example, terrace or something like that. If the text falls into the wrong place like this, you can at any time move it and place it somewhere else.
Perfect. We'll return to these data fields when we are going to get some quantity takeoffs, but now let's look at sections and elevations, because that's
yes.
a very broad topic.
Before we do that, there's one more thing that I like to highlight here, because that comes sometimes as a question. If you would like to change the style of the text here, that's an interesting and important thing here, that you can change it here in the properties. As you can see, it comes with styles. So here you cannot set up the details of the text settings, but you can select a predefined style that you already created. So if I go here, we will use this text tool soon. If you go here and use the text tool, these are the styles built in the program, and these are the blue ones are the styles that I have created. So you can actually use either the built-in text styles, or you can create new text styles, and then you can.
This actually applies to everything in the software. You can work with the styles that we have shipped with the software, but you're obviously urged to make your own. So let's talk about sections and elevations, because you mentioned a very important thing in the beginning, that they are going to be drawings which are in living relation connection with the model itself.
Yeah.
Now let's see how that works.
Yeah, well, actually, if you create elevations and sections, and if it's a wall elevation, or if you're an interior designer, or if it's a full building section, those are in living connection with the building itself. So this means if you use the section tool, for example, this one here, and you can also find it in the documentation, this is the same. So you use the section tool, and then you set up the settings, and then you create the section. It will generate a drawing, but that drawing is not just a bunch of lines. It will be representing the real items. So if you update those items, this drawing can be also updated. So let's just show how that works. First things first, these are the regular settings of this is how the software starts with the detailed settings. From areas to other areas, you might want to use different settings. Now, for example, in my area where I live, we would like to see both symbols at both ends, so A section, and then also you can change this here. You can also turn on the region depth if you would like to use that. I will show on the 2D and in the 3D
that
as well
means.
what that means. You can also turn on what happens behind that region, how it will be colored. Now I will just use a darker tone of gray.
Okay, see.
And then you can also set up the hatch-on section, which is in many countries in use, where you represent how the structure is built up using the sections of the hatches of the intersected items. So you can change these at any time, but you can also preset these settings, and then you can say okay, and then you will likely to create some section line from this point to, I just keep holding the shift key. I think we discussed that in an earlier session what that means.
Shift key would
to
lock the direction
direction
into an orthogonal vertical or horizontal direction.
Yes. And then now I just click here, and if you can see this arrow pointing from the top or the bottom where I move my mouse, this is how you can set up what will be the viewing direction of this section. So if I click here, I will intersect the model and I will look to the upper part, and then I can say yes, and then now I have this here. So let's discuss what we see. First things first, we can see the hatches, and as I mentioned, there are no layers here. I did not detail the structure yet, but of course, if I use a different style, if I use a different wall structure, that is also represented. Now, what makes a difference? Why this structure is represented this way and why that structure is represented that way? It's actually in the settings of each and every structure, the material settings. So if you can see, this slab is coming with, in this specific case, with this one single layer, and then it's built up using a concrete layer. And if I go to the libraries and I right click here and I say settings, then I can reveal how this material is built up for the section, because that's actually an option here. You will likely see this or this by default, but if you click here on the hatch on section, there you can see that the hatch spacing, the hatch color, and actually the hatch pattern itself is set to be this. So if I would like to change the hatch pattern, or if I would like to change the hatch color, this is now what I will do to have something very much visible. So you can change any of these later on, and when you say okay, you close this, and then when you update the section, then you will see the change. So now it disappeared. This is temporary. It's normal. But if you would like to update the section, you have two options. One option is to find the section line and right click and click on create refresh, and see now it's updated.
Yes.
And the other one, which is again a routine for most of our users, is to rebuild the 3D. That will do the same. The difference between the two, that if you specifically instruct the software to update the section only, you will only update this section, and sometimes it takes much shorter than to completely update the full model.
So what you're saying is that when you want to define how the section hatch patterns look like, that's not something that the section itself determines, but the objects themselves.
Yes. So you can easily control when you build up, as we discussed. You build up a wall style, you build up a roof style, you build up some specific item on your own. Then you can determine how it will look like, not only in the 2D, not only in the 3D, but also in the section.
That was something very strange in the section line. If we can go 2 stories down, we can see that it actually cuts into one of the rooms. And what happens if I want to move it along the corridor?
Yeah.
Obviously, I could move I could offset the whole section line, but what happens if I just want to offset that middle part of it?
Yes, there are many times when one part of the section line is already in the ideal position, because I would like to intersect this part of the staircase, but I would like to change the path at the end. So it actually happens the same way as you can change the contour of a slab or something. You select it first, then you click on this marker, and then you insert a node, a breakpoint.
These are the standard 2-dimensional drawing kits that you can use. So you just put in a node, and then you offset.
And then now that it has 2 separate parts, you can just click on this one, and then you can use offset. You can move it somewhere in the center of this corridor, so we can nicely intersect this door and this window here. And then you can just hit enter. And then actually most of the times when this sort of thing happens, then the software will also ask for you to update the project, the section or not. If it takes long, I can say no, and at a later stage I can say, okay, now update it. But now it takes very quick, so I just click OK, and now this part also became gray. And what's that? Actually, do you remember we set up this setting here, this one, there's the crop region depth, and there is this show items behind the crop region 2, their color is gray. So what happens here, if I click on this one, we can see this dashed line.
That's how far we see actually, right?
And that's the core of the section. So whatever is inside this and this area in between, that's the core. That's the most important part for me now. And everything falling behind that is represented, but it's less important. So it has this gray color. You can disable this option. Some countries, they just simply don't use this. But if you need to use it, or if you just would like to simply highlight what's in front and what's most important, you can use this option. There is one more thing missing from here.
Yes, actually, I was about to ask you that. It's regarding the chimney. There's a floating element here.
Yeah.
So what happened with this middle part?
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. In ARCHLine, there is an option to hide objects. And well, you can design chimneys many ways. And at this specific stage, the designer who designed this building decided to use a chimney object. By default, the section tool hides all the objects because many times you don't want to see chairs and other things intersected on your design. But as this project is clear enough, it's already have these layers turned off, I could actually turn on this setting. And actually, why do I know that this is an object? Because if I go to here and I select this chimney, it tells me that that's an object.
Yes.
And if I go to the settings of this section, I can see this option, which is by default on, to hide all the objects. But if I disable this and I click OK and I update the section,
again to update the section, and
then I can see it. Now it's intersected, so that's why it looks like that.
Yes.
But actually, yeah.
But that's how you do that. So obviously you sometimes want to hide all the objects, but if you modeled certain things using objects, then that's the way to proceed. How do elevations differ from generating sections? So what's the difference?
Well, actually, let's start with the similarities, because I think there are a lot of similarities. One thing is how they are generated. They are also generated based on the building itself. So they are generated content. And why do I say that? Because if I click here, for example, this, as you can see, this is a door or a window or a slab or something. These are the original items. And in this manner, elevations are the same. Now, how to create an elevation? Now, there are elevation tools here as well. These are for the wall elevations. These are most likely for interior design. And if you would like to create an architectural elevation, you should go to the project navigator, and now I just pin it here. And then you can select one of these elevations that you would like to create. Or if you would like to draw some elevation on your own, then you can just right click here and create a new one. But if you would like to go with the default elevations, you can just simply click on, for example, north elevation.
Draws the line for you, and then it generates an elevation generated from that line.
Yes. So if I click on create the elevation view, then the software will automatically create this elevation view, and it will also highlight that elevation with the 2D symbol. So you will easily see that that's what we talk about as a north direction, and it's actually based on the real direction. So now if I see this is pointing to the building with this arrow here, and that's why I see what I see here. And then I have several options. Now, first things first, a few things that I think are the most important here. If you click on the symbol, you can see it has a line, just as you mentioned. It's in this manner. It's also similar to a section, because you have like a face line, and then from that face line there is a view direction. And also this line has a length, and also this line can be broken. You can easily insert nodes.
Just the same way, yes.
If the elevation is so complex that you need to break the elevation line, you can do that as well. Now in this case it's very simple. We don't want to do that. We might want to offset this symbol somewhere else, but we don't want to break it. And maybe I would like to change the settings, or I would like to change the length of this section. First things first, let's go to the settings. If I would like to do that, I just hit escape, I click here, and I click the properties.
Very similar to how sections are made, because now you can enable, disable objects, enable
Yes.
like hatch patterns.
Yes, there are common parts when we talk about an elevation and when we talk about a section, and there are differences. One thing that is common, but in my scenario will be used only for this elevation now, is that you can actually create a partial elevation view, and there is its counterpart for the partial section view, and it works the same. If you enable this section, this option, and you click OK, yeah, well now nothing changes, because this actually determines that if the section line ends, or in this case the elevation line ends here, that's the end of the elevation drawing. So if I click here and I say, okay, modify profile and move this node to make this line shorter, and do this same thing on the other end, and then I hit enter to close this and update it, then now we can see the change. Now it's shorter. So you can set up the horizontal boundaries of what's represented on the elevation, and there is its counterpart inside the settings, where you can limit it up and top the same way.
Can we demonstrate how it's in connection with the drawing? Because we have talked about that, but if we could maybe just modify something either here or on the model, because it works both ways obviously, but how do we do that?
Yeah, well actually, as you can see now, this is also a wall as an object, a roof or something. Now actually this whole thing is part of my project. If I organize the drawings, now I have an elevation view, 2D, 3D, and a section. If I go back to the section, I can do whatever I want to do here. I can even go back to the 2D, select something like, let's just go back to the first floor, I mean the ground floor, and change this, for example, to be at 1 meter, and see now it's automatically updated.
Sometimes that these things are changed, but yeah, so and it works both ways, right?
Yes.
So if you move something on the section or the elevation, it affects the model.
See, now it's a bit scrambled here, and that's normal, because by default the software will only update the elements that are in connection with the change, not the full model. So it won't automatically create like hiding objects or something like that to conserve time. So you don't have to wait, I don't know, minutes just because you have a complex plan and you just move the door and you would like to update all the drawings. So if you would like to update this one, you can again go to the settings on the 2D, select the elevation line and click on update. And now I would like to just simply demonstrate how the 3D update works, and you can just simply click on 3D, and if you'd like to make sure everything is updated, then you just click here and you just wait until everything gets updated, and now all of the drawings are updated. And there is one other thing that I would like to show here, and that's how the elevation drawing looks like, because that's now just a line drawing. It's a simple drawing, but I would like to also represent how you can turn this into something more spectacular, more detailed, more elevation-like, and then you should just simply use this here. Oh, okay, this is this is for shadows. As you can see here, it appears shadows. If you click here, you can set up settings, or you can just go with the default. Now I don't touch anything. I just use the default. I only change the light direction to elevation shadow, and I say okay. And then this is what you will get, something with shadows. So it gives you some depth for this elevation. Or if you would like to add some sort of material or surface representation, not just the pure white surfaces, then you can just simply come back and select shade with textures, and then just again say okay. And the software calculates the result, and then you can see the details. And again, this is in connection with what you set up for the surfaces as materials and in real materials. So if I would like to see why this surface is represented like this, then I need to find what sort of material I used here. If I right click here and I say, okay, find this material to me, that's here, I double click here, and then I can see that it has hatch on section. Now it's not a section, so this is not why we can see that, but there is also a hatch in 3D. And that's actually how it will be represented if it's not a surface, not a texture, but it should be represented as a drawing, as a hatch. Then this is how it looks like. And you can even turn it off. So if you don't want to see stone wall to be hatched in the 3D, then you can just simply turn it off, say okay, and then now again I will just simply update the 3D,
and the change
and
will
then we
take
will see this change here appearing.
Now, you mentioned this before, but that it is possible to unlink these drawings from the 3D model. For whatever reason you want to do that, how does that work?
If you would like to unlink these drawings, then that means you would like to break this connection and you would like to keep them detached and keep them as line drawings, then all you need to do is just to select this drawing that you already have generated with the software. You just select it, and then you just Control-C, copy it, Control-C, and then you just pick up a copy reference point. And then the kind of trick here is that you need to paste it into a 2D drawing. So I just paste it here, and then it is the same content visually,
but it's exploded back to its
But it's
line,
exploded, yeah. If I click here, it's not an object, it's a line. If I click here, it's not a door or a window, it's a polyline, or these are primitives. So now you can actually literally do whatever you want. You can even, for example, erase this line, which otherwise would be impossible because that's part of the model and there's a surface.
So this is good for detailing, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to add additional details to your drawing, that's how you do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Now,
many users who got used to the 2D detailing in this fashion, they use this to simply at the moment at a certain phase they just detach the drawing and then they start detailing into.
I was starting to end up with many different drawings and 2 and 3 dimensional menus basically. So how do we keep track of what we are doing? You have already shown us the project navigator, but what happens if you close a couple of these drawings? How do you retrieve them and where are they stored?
First things first, for this reason, how we have this content represented now, this is not ideal now as it is appearing. It's not ideal to have the floor plan and next to it the drawing.
That's what the plot layouts are for, right?
Yeah, it's not something that is kind of against all good, but it's better to keep things organized in a way where you can see elevation drawings as elevation drawings and ground and floor plans as floor plans and so on. You can actually do that if I just undo this last step. You can actually at any point create a new drawing, and you can say that you would like to create something which is a new 2D drawing. For any sort of reason, you would like to create some drafts or anything here. Now this I will name as 2D unlinked elevations. Okay, and now I paste this content here. I paste it. So it's broken the connection. There is no connection with the original model already. These are lines. These are hatches.
That's the better practice, to keep the drawings like that separate.
And then if I create another elevation, let's just quickly create another elevation. Let's just say that I would like to also set up a south elevation. Yes, do that. I can again detail it the way I did it before, but now I keep it simple. I just simply click Control Copy, and then see now I can find my drawings. And there should be one named 2D unlinked elevations, this one. Yes. And then now I can paste it here, paste. But there is an even better way than that. You can actually use the floors as pages. So now if you click here, you can just rename it as, I don't know, I think this was the north elevation. North elevation, and then you can name all the rest according to what you would like to use. I think it was east and west and south, and then you can just move to that floor, which is an empty page, an empty drawing, and then paste it here. So you will have a very well organized environment around you, using simply like turning the pages of a book, and then you can start detailing. Which if we go back to what we learned here, there is the dimension tool, and there is for example, the elevation on section, and then you add the detail, like you start at 0 point, and then you measure this elevation, you place it here, and then you click here, and then you click here. So you actually measure all sort of detail that you wanted to measure, and then you can add, for example, a title. You say that this is, I think this was the north elevation, and then OK. And then you just place it. If it's too small, you can use a different style, or you can just simply select it and change it to, I don't know, something larger. And this is how it goes. This is how you detail it.
Perfect. Now we are wandering into the territory of how to keep track of your project and how to use documentation tools. But now the next logical step would be to put together a plot layout and get these out to the open. So what comes next? There are several instances that we talked about how to put together a print layout, but I think this is something that we have to touch upon here as well. So we already talked about how to organize a project content. Now let's get this to the printer and see how we can get it out from the system.
Yes, first things first, in ARCHLine when you print something is the print as you see logic behind. So if you see something in front of you, you can easily print it by just simply go to the print file, print or print to PDF, and
yes.
this is what you see will be printed. Now this is the most kind of simple or easy way of printing anything. If you would like to keep it a little bit more organized, or you have a more complex plan and you would like to set up a plot layout, you need to go to documentation and set up a plot layout. And now that happens, you need to set up a paper size, and then you can also use these plot stamp or title boxes that you can, it's actually already shipped with the software, but you can also create your own title boxes. So you can just say okay, and then the software tells you this information, and then you can fill this up by simply filling up these values. You just click here and type something, or if you already used the project parameters, which now I just simply inherit these options, then the software can auto-fill these. And why is that happening here? It's actually, see now it happened, it's actually because previously at some stage of this project I went here and I went to the BIM and the project parameters and I simply filled these up. It is the designer name, that's the company name, and so on. And these
project data.
This data can be inherited into that plot stamp or title box. Now this way you prepare a page, a layout, and on this layout you can place these drawings. Like for example, if I would like to add this north elevation that I just created previously, I just simply click and drag, and then I can set up the scaling. Now remember, in ARCHLine before, we never set up the scaling. We always use the one-to-one scaling of the real world. We actually design a digital representation of the real existing or future building. So,
but we can't do it here.
But we can, at the end, when we decide how we would like to demonstrate it or how we would like to document it, then that's the stage when you need to decide the scaling. So now I will go with the 1 to 100. I think that will be okay, and then I just place it somewhere here. See, there's the text, there are everything else. But what happens if I now I save this project, tomorrow I continue, and then I add more details? How that will be represented here. Let's just find this elevation. I think it's this one here. So on the unlinked version here, I add another detail which I wanted to represent at the beginning. I told you about this.
That's right.
Serial
So
horizontal dimension. I think it's very useful. You just pick 2 points, and then you just keep clicking. And then you add those details. It's very simple, very easy to use. So you make changes for this design, and then you would like to, obviously, you would like to see this here appearing on this layout. And then if you just click on this one and you say, okay, update, refresh this, then the software will refresh this layout. But even if then you cannot see the changes, then you should change the boundaries, because now it's actually just
it's probably outside
too small.
of the boundaries. Yeah. That's right. You have to offset the boundaries to the south, and
you just need to make it a little bit larger, and then you can see more of that drawing. Mm-hmm. The same way you can actually limit it. So if for any reason there is something that you don't want to see, then you can just cut it off.
Yes.
And the advantage of a layout is that this layout obviously can contain not only one single drawing, but it can also contain multiple versions of the same drawing or other drawings as well. So if you just, again, place a part here, like I don't know, for a reason I would like to add the ground floor itself, so I just drag and drop. Maybe. And then I say, okay, this should be 1 to 500 because it's just a representation of that model, and I think that's too small.
200, I think, would
or
do.
200, yeah. I just click and drag, and let's say 200. So now I can place it. Well, actually, I think it's too far off because we have some big content. And then see, now again, there was something far off the building. No problem. I just limit the offset, and then I just move it somewhere there. And when I realize it's too large, I can go to the settings and I can change the scaling. So at any point you can make changes, you can update, you can remove, you can rotate, because this part is actually behaving like a regular object. You can move it, you can rotate it, you can even remove it or change the layer settings, whatever you wish, you can do that.
Still, it's a living condition with the connection with the model, so it changes work both ways. Now, let's get this printed into a PDF, and I think that ties into the to the print tasks.
Yeah, print task, and there is one more thing, because if you start documenting or create documentation of your project, you will end up with one layout, another layout, and another layout. So if you would like to add another layout, and the current layout is active, then you use the documentation plot layout, and then you set up the paper size, and you say, okay, then the new layout will be created next to this one. So it's an important thing that if the layout is already active, then it won't be ending up in another window. It will be ending up in the same window, and then it's again a very well organized content. And again, you can set up the settings, you can select a plot stamp, you can update the properties, and then you can just place content. And now that if you would like to print this out, you can go to the file and print to PDF, and then you can set up the scaling, and you can set up what and how you would like to print, the paper size. And it's a very important thing that here, as now we are printing a layout, and there it has 2 pages, we actually should tell the software of which part we would like to print. So if I just click on window and I actually draw a window, it's the window which through I can see this content
around the item that you want to print, which is in case the whole layout, but you could have just part of it.
Yes, then it will be represented. But now, for some reason, I cannot see, and the first reason is the paper is too large. So I should go with an A4, for example. Still, it's very, very tiny. And why is that? It's because the scale factor.
It has already been scaled down to 1 to 100, and now it's 1 to 10,000, I think. So we have to put this. So now this time, when it comes to print, you have to do it in a 1-to-1 scale.
Yeah.
You want to have the actual circumstances to be reflected on the
and then you can either center the plot, so it will be auto aligned to the center, or you can just refine it using these values, or you can change these values, and then at the end you can print it into your PDF file. And what you mentioned, talking about the print jobs and the print tasks, there is a built-in tool which allows you to build up a print task list, and then it will be stored together with the project, which I will demonstrate now. I will load a later stage of this project
where we already have this.
Where we already have that. Open it, and then I will also tell you how to do something like that. Okay, let's just quit without saving.
So it does happen that sometimes you have several layouts and you don't want to manually print them. You just set up the whole job and you can do something else while it works.
Yeah, this is something that conserves again a lot of time, because well, now I have the time to set up my layouts and print them out. Okay, that's fine. But a week later, I shouldn't do that same process one by one again by simply clicking on the first layout, second layout, third layout. So I can build up a print task list, a print queue, and add a content here, add another one, and I can actually set up a ground floor, print it to a PDF, and then print it to a printer, or I can just set up the same content into the same PDF file, and that way you can create a multi-page PDF, which I already created before. So let me just quickly open that here. It's this one. So if you set up a print queue like this, setting up the first, second, and third page, and you just set up the same target, the same file, you will end up with an 8-page or multi-page drawing with all the drawings in the several other pages. So this is how you can create one single document with several other PDF pages.
Perfect. Now, so far we retrieved drawing data out of the model. How about numerical data? So how do we get quantity takeoffs and other kinds of calculations from the model?
Well, actually this leads us to something called like exports or data processing at the end. This quantity takeoff is one of that. The quantity takeoff is actually represented in the documentation, and you will find it with this Excel icon, because at the end you will end up with an Excel file with a list of rooms, with a list of objects, with a list of something that you select here. So, for example, if I would like to update extract my rooms, I say, okay, yes, please do that. update the project based on the latest changes, and then create a room and area list, save it. Then the software creates that, and it automatically opens the room list in an Excel file. So first with the summary, there are the rooms and the calculations, and then comes the calculation method, how it was calculated, and then the combined list, and again the details from the ground floor and from the first floor. So you will end up with a very detailed list of how it was calculated. This could be a basis of further calculation as well.
A couple of minutes ago, actually, when we defined the boundaries of the rooms, that's where these data is retrieved from. So that's how it gets into the calculations. Otherwise, the software is not able to tell you exactly how big the rooms are unless you define that this particular segment is a room.
Yes, and also you can extract information of building parts, for example, interior parts, styling, building parts themselves like walls, roofs, and things like that. Now, if I quickly create something like this as well, it will be something like a consignation Excel file with a bunch of pages that are here at the bottom, and also sometimes small thumbnails or just numerical data. And then again, you can use this for further calculations. And I think this is again a part where it comes interesting that what sort of wall we are talking about when the ID is 9 or 98
how
or
do you
112.
track it back to that particular element?
Yes. So actually these are the IDs, the identification markers of these items. So if I would like to find what is wall 112, I can go to the selection menu and then go to it's called the by properties, and then here I can find ID, and then I just need to type 112 and go OK, and the software will select it.
It tells you where it is. It jumps to the floor where it's located,
and it selects that.
It's highlighted.
Yeah. So it makes it easier to prove your point, to simply find things that are listed in the Excel file, and then make decisions based on that information.
That's right. You briefly mentioned information collaboration. So we looked at how to get drawing data, numerical data out of the model, but what other collaborational methods do we have in the software? I think we should look at the export formats to
Yes. First things first. The first most important file format that we stressed out using for collaboration between professionals, and especially when we talk about AEC software, architectural design software, in between those design software is the IFC file format. It's here. And if you would like to extract your design and give it to someone else to work on that, this is the go-to file format that you should go with, because it conserves not just the geometry, but it conserves all the BIM data. Now, you remember we actually talked about a little bit already about this information that I can find if I highlight this wall and I go to the BIM parameters. These are not just geometrical data, but these are also numerical and other data.
Yes.
And this is also passed when you do that.
We are going to touch upon that.
Yeah, we will talk about that
during
later.
the next session. Other data that you can get from the system is we already mentioned the Excels that you can get from the software, but there's a very important field of area what we should look at, and that's the communication with third-party renders.
Yes. The third-party renders are there are several of them by default directly supported. For example, Atlantis, Cinema, Thea, and Indigo, and things like that. And there are also common formats which are not necessarily for third-party renders, but for modelers as well. So if you would like to communicate with Autodesk products and you would like to use this information in those products, you can use the FBX. Or actually, FBX is supported by many other software makers as well. You can go with the 3ds, the OBJ, you can go with SKP, you can even import SKP, and then if you just would like to communicate 2D drawings, then you should go with DWG, DXF, or DWF file formats. And actually, of course, here you can find the PDF, the classic, and then if you have a 3D printer, you can go with an STL file. So as you can see, ARCHLine is determined to be an open software in terms of communication. When you would like to import something, you will find a lot of functions, a lot of formats, and then when you would like to communicate with the other professionals, you will also find a tremendous amount of files.
Tell us a couple of tips on what to pay attention to when you are doing an export.
Yeah, well, there is actually two specific ideas that I think is useful to keep that in mind. One is that if you communicate with other software worlds, you should take care of what sort of characters you use in the naming. You should, if you have in your language, you have some specific characters, you should avoid them. You just use the basic Latin characters, maybe hyphens, but nothing else. Just keep it simple, because sometimes the naming can cause some issue in other software.
We do have that problem sometimes with special characters.
Yeah. So it's just simply easier to just exclude them and then use the simple characters. And then another thing is that if you export something, many times not only one single file will be created, but a bunch of files. Because, for example, if you export OBJ or 3ds, you will end up with a file and textures and other descriptive files. So you just don't want to export these to your desktop and end up with a desktop filled with these files. So the idea here is just to always create a subfolder and export there, and then you won't have an issue with that.
That's right. Now, speaking of best practices, a couple of tips on how to handle the projects, because, you know, like I said before, we have tons of drawings generated here. So how do we make sure that we don't get lost?
Well, one tool which is very useful for that is the project navigator. Obviously, you click here, you can change the plan. You click here, you can create a new drawing, or you can highlight another one. You just click here, you can enlarge the drawing, and these are useful. But there is one other tool which is always in front of you, and I think it's worth always using it, and it's this one. This is the magnify window or enlarge active window. You just click here, and then the software enlarges that and also represents the rest of the drawing. So if you would like to highlight this one, you just click here and then click here. So this is a method where you can see a great overview of your full project with all the drawings and perhaps multiple pages if you worked in a way how we teach you today. And you will have the 3D, you will have the documentation, you will have the layouts, and it will be easy to maintain. And at any time, you can just click here again and make it full screen. You can click here again and make it small. I say highlighted, and the rest is also represented here. And if you have a multi-monitor system, which we have here, we cannot determine it, we cannot represent it how it works, but we can show you how you can detach a drawing and send it to the other monitor by using the second monitor option, which is this one. And this way I can move it to the other screen, which now you cannot see, so I just move it back, and I do like that.
But that's just gist of it. When you close it, it just goes back to the normal version. That's what we wanted to show you regarding the documentation and tools of ARCHLine. Let's look at that. There's an interesting question I think we should answer. Is there a way to add a new map in the objects to organize new objects?
Is there a way to add a new map in the objects to organize the new objects? Perhaps it's a folder, or I believe it's a folder we talk about. So if you would like to organize your content, you will always find them in the design center. So whatever you would like to add here, you will always end up with either a group, or a material or something like that. If it's an object, these are what we call them categories. If you would like to place something in a category, you will end up using these categories or your own category. And in these categories, you can create subcategories. You cannot create main categories, you cannot change these, but you can add subcategories. So if you would like to add something very specific, which is not falling into these groups, you just add them to the my category, and then that's how you organize content. If it's an object, a new object. If it's an existing object, then, for example, you click here and then you say, okay, this item, or let's just go back there. This item or any other of these are categorized, and if you click on categories, it tells you where it is. And then you can even move them into other categories. So you can, if you click here, sorting categories, you can change it to move from my category to somewhere else. I believe this answers the question, but if not, please let me know.
Then elaborate. So that's exactly what we wanted to cover during this session. So like I mentioned in the beginning, this Thursday on the 14th, we are going to have the next session, which will be about BIM in practice, which means we will talk about how to use BIM libraries and what benefits they bring and how to handle BIM data.
Yeah.
It always comes up every now or then what benefits BIM has to small to mid-sized projects. So we are also going to talk about the everyday benefits of BIM, which I think is something that we should always talk about, because we do have to spread the word on what benefits might bring to smaller size projects. And I think that's something that is worth listening to. And that would be the penultimate edition, which means that the last one would be about visuals and renders and how it all comes together to beautiful rendered images. And that's basically what we wanted to discuss. I see people are checking in. Hello to you too. Thank you for your attention. See you next time. And there's something else I wanted to share with you. There's a new survey that we are going to bring to your attention. This is just a very simple Google form on which you can rate how you like today's show. And if you have any additions to that, I'm just going to copy this into the chat bar so you can see. So take a look at this form, fill it up for our information, because that makes sure that the shows what we are making are staying relevant. So if you liked what you've seen, just give us a 10 out of 10, and we'll see each other next Thursday. Thank you very much for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.